This week, Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Zen Buddhist master, suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. A tireless advocate for peace, for forgiveness, for nonviolence, my heart is heavy with that news. I am reminded this morning of all of the tools that he offered his followers for encountering precisely this sort of difficult news. I offer one of his quotes here. "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." Hanh may very well remind us in our sorrow and in our suffering to pay attention to our breath, to be mindful of who we are and where we are, to not collapse into the vicissitudes of our attachments and expectations. This is one very worthy response to a very difficult question. How should one respond to suffering? How should one understand it? Every religious system that I am aware of addresses this question, even as they come to radically different conclusions about it. Not only are their solutions to suffering different, but what they see as the root cause is different as well. And so today I would like to take us on a bit of a journey, exploring a few of the major answers to the question of suffering, and offer my own reflections on what I believe to be the most helpful. And I want to offer a brief aside first. This week, as I was considering this question, I talked to my sharp-witted 15-year-old cousin. She has been very curious about my job as a minister, and she asked what I was preaching on this Sunday. I gave her the sermon title, "Can We Solve the Problem of Suffering?" Her answer was immediate. "Sure, don't buy Miley Cyrus's new CD." Made me wonder if perhaps Miley Cyrus's fame is going out a bit, but in any case, I love my cousin. I think I like her answer more than I like a lot of the answers to the problem of suffering that traditional theologies have offered. I find her answer more helpful. A few answers from the Christian tradition stand out to me. Trying to answer the question of why God would allow suffering, Luther and Calvin said that asking such questions is hubris. An all-knowing and all-powerful God does what an all-knowing and all-powerful God pleases, and we humans should not presume to question God's prerogatives. I think that this answer to suffering is a dangerous one, and I think that for a number of reasons. First, it closes off the role of human reason in faith, which is a toxin in any tradition. One of my convictions is that we human beings need to bring our whole self to questions of faith and theology, our bodies, our feelings, our experiences, and our reason. Cutting any one of those things off lessens our humanity. But more importantly, I think that this view of suffering runs the risk of sanctifying certain forms of suffering, certain forms of injustice. Why do some people suffer from poverty or genocide or racism? The answer that Calvin and Luther seem to offer is, who's to say? It's God's prerogative. I am far more persuaded by the view advocated by process theology, which is a course that I'm co-teaching with Bill Buchanan right now. This perspective says that the universe's unfolding is a risky, unfinished adventure. No one has domain over the future, not even God. Instead, there is a basic aim within us and within the world to create more connection and a more thriving life, an aim that can be ignored or distorted in so many tragic ways. Suffering occurs when that urge for life and flourishing is forgotten or even twisted into something ugly. Unfortunately, process theology does not inoculate us to suffering. Instead, what it suggests is that the biological and the social forces that organize life always walk the edges of chaos. Alfred North Whitehead, the father of process thought, put it this way: the essence of tragedy is not unhappiness. It resides in the solemnity of the remorseless working of things. While this view allows for us to create less suffering in our lives and in the world, it also acknowledges that suffering is a part of the risk that is this thing that we call life. That, to me, does seem like a meaningful answer. Like dark and light, suffering can be viewed as a companion to the more joyous parts of life. The poet Rumi noticed the proximity of suffering and joy, and he put it this way: your grief for what you've lost lifts a mirror up to where you're bravely working. Expecting the worst, you look, and instead, here's the joyful face that you've been wanting to see. Your hand opens and closes, and opens and closes. If it were always a fist or always stretched open, you would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding, the two as beautifully balanced and coordinated as birds' wings. Rumi's perspective is not so much a theological justification for suffering. It sees suffering less as a problem that needs to be solved and more of a constitutive part of this being human. Just like we wouldn't say our left leg is a problem, we should not be so quick to try to permanently amputate suffering, even if such a thing were possible. Instead, for Rumi, suffering is one of the wings that balances and coordinates us, allowing us to experience our humanity and our lives to their fullest extent. Now, I trust Rumi's writing here even as I struggle with it. The truth is that suffering is not just like another leg. It is an aversive experience. It can unravel us and everything that we thought we knew and trusted about our world. It can hurt so badly that we may wish for anything that would come and resolve it. This makes it seem less like a second wing or one of our legs and more like an open wound, something that needs sutures and bandaging, something that needs to be healed or fixed, not something that we simply live with. But this is where I think Rumi makes sense again, because the truth is that there are sufferings that we can never be fully rid of. They will always affect us. Our task is to find out how to mindfully live with them, not to push them away or try to resolve them. The spiritual writer Brian Doyle writes about this in his story called Family Holes, and I'd like to read an excerpt from that here. Every family, he writes, has a secret hole. Every family has more people at the table than you or I can see. If we set the right number of plates for all the people at the table, we would have to build much bigger tables. No one talks about those holes, and you can understand why, because the holes never actually heal, and they are awash with tidal pain. And when you stumble into a hole again for some reason, a sudden photograph or an artless question, there's that pain, again, patient and terrible, as ready with the scalpel as ever, and you stand there in the kitchen holding onto the counter with both hands, trying to get your breathing back in order, wondering for the 100th time how it is that pain like this causes you to feel as if you are suddenly hollow, with nothing at all remaining of the crucial organs that used to be behind the flimsy armor of your chest. I have seen people stumble into these holes, writes Doyle. I have watched it happen. You can see it happen in the countries of their faces. I saw a man look at the photograph and see the brother who wasn't there. I saw that happen in his face. I saw a woman say two when someone asked her how many children she had, and I realized that the answer was 3. I have seen a woman fall again and again into the hole where her father used to be. I saw a woman just the other day grab hold of the kitchen counter with both hands because she was walking through the kitchen with a platter of food, and she slid into the hole left by her baby brother, who was always her baby brother, even when he died at 50. We try all sorts of things to hide these holes. Some people run as fast as they can for as long as they can to stay ahead of them. Some people build stories and live inside them. Some people construct lock boxes or complicated labyrinths like jails to hold their holes. Some people pour whiskey or worse to hide their holes. Some people get trapped in their holes and become their holes and lose themselves forever. Some people acknowledge them and treat them as family members that you cannot evade. Some people try to bend their holes into music or paintings or essays or books. Some try to become other people altogether so that their holes lose track of them and wander around aimlessly without anyone to haunt. Doyle concludes his story. Every one of us is in a family somehow. There are all sorts of families, and all families are odd and awkward and shape-shifting, and they all have holes and people hurting and huddling and hiding from those holes. But it turns out that you cannot hide from your holes, and they are always there, somewhere inside of you or around you, and there is nothing that you can do but hold on to the kitchen counter or reach for someone in your family, whatever kind of family that is, and wait until your crucial organs shuffle back into your hollow chest. There may be nothing good about holes other than the way that they make you reach for someone else. Maybe at the same person, maybe at the same time that person is reaching for you, which is another one of the things we mean when we try to say what we mean by love and spirit and praying. So ends his reading. What I love about Brian Doyle's take is that it leaves a lot of room for our humanity in this question of suffering. It does not tell us that we have to run, that we have to be someone else, that we have to try to solve it like it's some sort of problem. Instead, he advises us to pay attention to those holes in our lives, those losses, those personal sufferings. He asks us to listen to them and be kind to them, to be mindful and compassionate to ourselves in the presence of them. And in this being mindful, he discovers some of the truths that lie in proximity to our suffering, truths about love and spirit and praying that emerge just at the borders of our most painful experiences. My spiritual companions, I don't think that I have solved the problem of suffering this morning. But maybe, together, we have made more space for it, provided some more helpful tools for addressing it. Maybe we have found a way that walking its edges and feeling its innards opens the space for a new emerging in us. Just maybe it has made us a bit more human by creating a space for it. Maybe that's as much as we can ask. I'd like to close today with a reading from the poet Rashani. I am a simple cowherd girl, fallen to her knees, singing endless praises like the wind sings through the trees. Filled now with wonderment, distilling into grace, I find traces of you everywhere through your ever-present face. Only the flower dies. Its fragrance still remains, and the moon is always full, even as it wanes. I know that love does to pain what sunlight does to rain. In the absence of doership, we're reminded once again that inherent in each cloud is a rainbow not yet born. The awkward and awakened state is present even as we mourn. So let the tears keep flowing and trust whatever comes. Each moment is a banquet of abundance, not of crumbs. Let me read that last line again. So let the tears keep flowing and trust whatever comes. Each moment is a banquet of abundance and not of crumbs. I pray that that is true for you, my spiritual companions. Amen. I love you, and blessings on your journey.